You're listening to Coming of Cage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am your host, Derek, and I've got my co-host and partner in crime with me, Ryan.
Hello.
Hello. And this is our second episode of 2023, episode 18 of the show. And we are talking about the 2000 Nicolas Cage film Gone in 60 Seconds, where, quote, a retired master car thief must come back to the industry and steal 50 cars with his crew in one night to save his brother's life.
Wow.
Wow, indeed. The movie is directed by Dominic Sena, who also directed Nick Cage in Season of the Witch, which we have not gotten to yet on the show. And the movie was written by, I just had it, where'd he go? Here he is, Scott Rosenberg, who also wrote Con Air. So,
okay.
Yeah, a little bit of Nick Cage kind of connections there across these films. This, of course, is a remake of the 1974 movie. So
yes,
there you go. Gone in 60 Seconds. Ryan, what's your history with this movie? We don't have a history with all of Nick Cage films, but
I have a history with several Nick Cage films. This one was just one that, if you've heard me on the show, you probably heard me talk about the little TV VCR combo I had in my bedroom when I was like, I don't know, young. And I had like, I don't know, over the years I gathered more, but I started with like 3 or 5 VHSs, and that slowly grew. And one of the VHSs I had was this movie, and I watched it quite a bit. So yeah, I have a connection with this movie, and I haven't watched it really since I upgraded to a DVD player. So
yeah, I hadn't seen it in quite a long time myself. This is one I'd seen before several times. I would come across TNT or TBS or whatever back in the day, but oddly enough, like this hasn't gotten much of a re-release over the years in various formats. There is a director's cut on DVD somewhere if you're able to find it. And it's not even streaming anywhere like as part of a service. You have to rent it through, Amazon or Vudu or even YouTube. So I thought that was odd considering this is like one of his bigger movies.
yeah.
That it was actually harder to get a hold of than a lot of his smaller stuff.
Yeah, it is a little weird. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that, but he didn't put it on Tubi or Freevee, I guess. So
No, I guess not. But yeah, I mean, the movie also co-stars Angelina Jolie, of course, as the only woman in the entire film.
That's true. Yeah, that's accurate.
Christopher Eccleston, Robert Duvall, Timothy Oliphant, Delroy Lindo, a few others, of course. It's kind of a large cast.
Yeah, it does have a stacked cast for sure.
Makes it even kind of weirder that like legitimately, like there's only 2 women in the whole movie. There's Angelina Jolie and then Nicolas Cage's mother character. I'm drawing a blank on her real name. She actually was on Seinfeld back in the day. But
there was also Robert Duvall's wife, who you see for a few scenes that doesn't really get much in the way of anything to do.
Yeah, you're right. So the way we normally do this, of course, is Ryan has taken notes, and then we go through those notes as it takes us through the film.
I do, yeah. So right in the beginning, the intro, like the opening credits, which overall, my second note is that it's a great intro. But The first note is yikes, because there's a bunch of, this was in 2000, so Photoshop wasn't really a thing. So it's a bunch of like modified photos to look like Nick Cage growing up, like he's young and growing up and the people around him.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a really interesting intro to like kind of give you a familiarity with the characters and kind of know what their roles are as time goes on through through Nick Cage growing up. But yeah, they did not look good.
It was the best use of the Jerry Bruckheimer production intro with the road in the desert.
Oh yeah.
It's really the only movie that's worked well with, I think. But yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to hear a guy give us this taught me what The Stranger was. Did you know what The Stranger was before this movie, Derek?
Here's the thing. I don't know. I forgot that it was in here. So maybe that's where I learned about it. I feel like it was a joke in something else too.
It probably was, but I feel like for me, this was the earliest one that I remember seeing. So I feel like it was probably the intro for you if you watch this around the time it came out.
I think you're right. Like because I think the only other reference I'm aware of is in Scrubs,
Yeah.
which would have been like 8 years later or something. So
But basically this scene is like, well, we haven't met Nicolas Cage's character, but this is a character that's called Kip Raines that, and his crew, all kind of planning a heist, and they talk about The Stranger, which is a self-pleasuring technique. If you want more information, you can look it up. I'm sure it's all over the internet, or don't. I mean, if you're curious. And they're all planning on stealing this Porsche, and they're given a like intersection where the Porsche is parked, and it turns out that it's in the dealership still, like on one of those revolving things that most dealerships don't really have, but it looks good. And yeah, they have to they realize that it's in the dealership, and Kip Raines goes in there and throws a rock through the window and snags the keys and attempts to steal the car.
I mean, he does steal it.
He does steal it. Yeah, he doesn't like successfully steal it. Eventually he gets caught, but you know.
Yeah, but that's like his own stupidity, right? Because like they're probably going to get away with it, and then he has to like drag race some dude on a date.
Okay, that was my next note. It's in 2000. This was a very expensive Porsche, right?
Yeah,
it was like a high end car, and he rolls up to the stoplight against a Honda Civic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not even an SI.
It's not even consistent within the movie because later there's the detective Roland makes a knock against Civics in the same movie.
Yeah. But if you notice, they don't have the emblem on the front of the Honda Civic. So I'm wondering if maybe Honda wouldn't endorse the movie or something. But anyway, yeah, and me and Derek are kind of car nerds. So sorry if I will probably get into the weeds on it a little bit, but Derek might be able to control me and reel me in. But yeah, I'm car nerds. So if I'm nerding out over like car stuff that's not interesting at all, I'm really sorry.
I don't want that responsibility because while you know way more than I do, I also like listening to you talk about it. So.
Well, hopefully other people do too, because otherwise this is going to be really bad. So I can't remember exactly what character's talking. They're talking about this Porsche, right? And they talk about 5.2 seconds, 0 to 60. And okay, just to touch on that, in the year 2000, that wasn't a horrible statistic. In the year 2023, that is a really terrible statistic. So just for your own reference, cars that can go faster than that, 0 to 60. 2017 Range Rover.
Really? Those are heavy.
A 2010 Lexus IS350. A Lincoln MKS EcoBoost. A Lincoln Navigator.
What?
Yeah, 2021 Lincoln Navigator. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's some like cars on this list that you would probably laugh at because you wouldn't think that they were. I'm not going to go through all of them. Nissan 350Z, which nowadays is like you can pick one of those up for like $10,000. Back in the day, that Porsche was like a lot more expensive than that. Do you know Subaru BRZ, which is really slow, and people make fun of for being really slow, but is that exact same 0-60. So
I do wonder which Porsche it was because there's so we've got the list of the 50 cars and there's several Porsches on it.
To be honest, I am not interested at all in Porsches, so I couldn't begin to tell you.
It's just hard because like I know that there are differences visually, but they all do look so freaking similar.
Yeah, they are very similar.
And in this movie, like they're all within a year or so of each other, right? 1997 to 2000. And there's like 5 Porsches that they get within that year range. They all look exactly the same to me.
Yeah, that's fair. So then we get to see Timothy Olyphant. And this has got to be like one of his first movies. I didn't look at his IMDb, but he is so young in this movie. It's jarring.
Yeah, he was young. I guess I didn't really think too much about it. Now I'm all curious. Let's see, actor. Let's scroll. I'm scrolling. No, it's not. No, he had done tons of stuff before
Patty?
this. Yeah, because like he had done Scream 2. He had been on Sex in the City already, and then he did Gone in 60 Seconds was definitely like a bigger movie compared to his previous stuff, but he was in like a dozen things before that, mostly
Okay.
TV.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think he probably had much in the way of leading roles before that,
No,
but
no.
this was a big like blockbuster movie at the time, so it was probably one of his biggest roles, um, or probably one that kind of kickstarted his career, but maybe not. I don't know. One of I think this is the first quote because sometimes I like to really pick apart the writing and pick good quotes from the movie. I think I have several in this notebook, but we'll find out as we go. But the first one is like stains on a mattress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Somebody says that. I think that. Oh, so right before this, we get introduced to Nick Cage's character, who is Randall Memphis Raines, the brother of Kip Raines.
Right. Yeah.
It's a little confusing because like half the people call him Memphis and like one cop calls him Randall.
Yeah, but the detective calls him Rains because it sounds like Riggs.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why. And he is blonde in this movie. I feel like that's important to point out. And it looks wonderful. I love it.
He does look good. He looks pretty good in this movie, especially like after he gets the jacket back and everything.
Yeah, lowrider. Yeah, and so I can't remember who says that. I thought it was somebody saying that to. It was somebody. Okay, so the main cop, Roland Castlebeck. He hears that there's a bit of there's basically they steal the Porsche, the brother does, and they get caught with all these stolen cars, and the guy that hired him to steal the cars is pissed off about it, essentially.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so Memphis hears that his brother's in trouble, so he comes back to town because apparently he lives out of town now. Mm-hmm. And the cops hear that he's in town like a day after all these cars are found. And he was a notorious he was a notorious car thief.
So I do have
the best ever.
I have a little bit of a problem with that. Okay. Because the way it goes down is that Memphis goes to the diner that his mother works at to go and talk to her about Kip. And just like a couple of rando cops are just sitting eating lunch at this diner. And they recognize a car thief who's been gone for 6 years and I guess was never actually caught and convicted, but somehow they can catch this guy randomly on just a day in the diner enough to call the detective who like oversees Grand Theft Auto. That felt like a little bit of a stretch to me.
I think it maybe is a little bit of a stretch, but I think it was just meant to show that how notorious of a car thief he was, that like literally every cop knew who he was.
Yeah, and
there's way worse problems than that with this movie, but
it just felt like I mean, because it's 2000, right? So like, there's no smartphones or social media really or anything like that. So it's like, how would they really know? I don't know. There's a lot of cops in LA. It just felt unlikely. I think the odds were better that Roland happened to stroll into the diner and just bump into him. I feel like that would have been better for me.
Nah, I didn't really care that much. It wasn't really a problem for me. Okay. Like I said, for me, it just felt like it was just that notorious of a car thief. He's the best. The guy said that Grand Theft Auto went down like 60% after he left. So that tells me that he would be extremely notorious. So like every cop would be wanting to catch this guy. So that I assume that's why. But yeah, so when he leaves the diner, the cops like just want to have a conversation, an extremely intimidating conversation with him. Mm-hmm. Like cops in this time period do in movies. And they basically say they're going to be, somebody says that they're going to be all over him. And then the other cop says like stains on a mattress.
Yep.
And it was just this disgusting line. Why would I don't know.
So here's the thing. This is where it sparked in my mind how weirdly coincidental it is that we're talking about this movie directly after Stolen. because they're kind of like mirror images of each other from a narrative perspective. Both of them have a Nicolas Cage who's basically a criminal who's coming back into the world. Okay. And the cops are almost the first people he meets. They're really rude and vulgar to him, even though he's seemingly minding his own business at this particular point. And then the two Nick Cages have a choice to make: go to the cops for help or do it on their own. And in Stolen, he tries to go to the cops, and in Gone in 60 Seconds, he just goes in on his own. And I think it's a really weird coincidental parallel between these two movies that we watched them back to back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's going to be I think it's going to be a common theme between a lot of the movies, because even like Dog Eat Dog, he was a criminal that, like, I don't know. I guess he didn't really try and work with the cops in that one.
No, he's bad the whole way through.
He plays a criminal and everything. So
a lot of the time. But
I assume that half of them will be retired by the time we get through all his movies. So I don't think that's going to be a super unique thing.
Okay, fair enough. It was just an interesting thing I noticed.
So yeah, actually, I don't think we know that his name is Memphis Reigns at this point, because we only hear him referred to as Randall.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
But so he comes into town and he's trying to figure out who his brother, was dealing with, what's going on. And then we get like one of his old friends showing up that it turns out is working for the guy that hired his brother, and that he wants to talk to him.
Right. The guy from Armageddon.
Yes. He knows. Yes. That guy from Armageddon. And he knows that, the bad guy that we haven't met yet knows that Memphis Reigns is this notorious criminal, blah, blah, blah. Because everybody knows who he is. He's a celebrity. And so he goes to the steel plant. And one thing that I noticed as an adult that I didn't really notice or care about as a kid is that OSHA really needs to go to this steel plant, because there's like random fireballs blasting all over the place for no reason. So that's my next note, was random fireballs, because as they're walking in, there's just fireballs like in the middle of a pile of cars or like steel or something for no reason. And then I think this is the point where we find out his name is Memphis, because somebody refers to it as Memphis Reigns. And I think it's the Carpenter.
Yes.
The bad guy.
Yeah, Eccleston's character.
Raymond Calitri.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boy,
so, we get up to a lot of shenanigans in this movie. This movie has a lot of shenanigans.
A lot of heavy on the shenanigans.
Yeah.
So yeah, my next note was Memphis Reigns, because that's like such a cool name.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, so one thing, even as a young man watching this movie, that has always bothered me about this movie, and I don't know, I've not seen the actor that plays Raymond Calitri and other things much, if ever. I don't know. I'm not very familiar with him. But in this movie, I don't know if it's his choice or just his natural thing, but he emphasizes everything he says with his mouth. His mouth, like he moves his mouth too much for what he's saying. Did that not bother you? You didn't get that?
I mean,
he opens his mouth really wide and like really like goes for every single syllable.
It didn't bother me. I'm aware of it, but supposedly that's his real accent. So most people would probably know him from, I think, Doctor Who, which is why you and I
probably
are not, particularly well versed. But supposedly his accent, the way he talks in Gone in 60 Seconds, is just his natural speaking.
So that's the way he actually moves his mouth when he speaks?
Supposedly, according to IMDb.
I could not be his friend.
Well, I don't know if he'd want to be your friend after that.
He would not be.
But he's a beautiful carpenter, isn't he?
I don't know. You don't really get a good look at his wood. He just like talks about it.
Well, he makes that coffin.
Allegedly, we didn't see him make it. We don't know.
Well, that seems like a weird thing to lie about.
Well, when you're a criminal and you have enough money to pay people off, you can do whatever you want.
Well, by the end of the movie, like talking about the shenanigans and everything, like he's very protective over those chairs.
Okay, yeah. It does get a little weird later. He's talking about how like soft wood is and metal is like hard and cold, and it's like, yeah, okay. I mean, yes, that's true.
He's kind of an annoying character because like, yeah, he's the bad guy and all, but like he's also he's the reason that they're stealing the cars. If he doesn't like cars, then don't sell cars.
Right.
If you hate the country so much, like he came here.
Leave.
He legally came here, legally. after being a criminal in another country. So like if you hate it here, go like he didn't have to come here. Like he just complains a lot for the
He
guy who's
does.
in charge of everything.
So after this conversation, they're like walking out into the middle of the junkyard, and Memphis just keeps like asking where his brother's at. Where's his brother? And at one point, before they start walking in the yard, he says that they said they fronted his brother $10,000, which seems like a really low amount of money for stealing 50 cars. But so Nicolas Cage hands him 10 grand and says, your debt's paid. I understand. And then he just like throws the money back at him and
He
says he
almost
wants
breaks,
you to,
by the way. Nick Cage almost broke.
yeah.
You can kind of see it. Yeah.
Well, he gets the money thrown at him, and instead of the money, the guy wants the favors, of course, right? Because that's how people like this work. He wants him to go get these cars. And in order to entice him to do so, he walks him out of the yard where there's more fireballs out of nowhere, but it's darker now, so they really show up. And his brother is handcuffed to a car, steering wheel in like a car crushing machine that moves really slow.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts crushing his brother in the car crushing machine until he agrees to do it. Nick Cage starts punching people and pointing a gun at him and everything else. And eventually he agrees. And his brother's alive.
Mm-hmm.
And they go back to his brother's house where his brother makes some breakfast.
Really bad breakfast.
Really bad breakfast. Spills salt all over it.
Kip is just so incompetent throughout the entire movie.
Kip is incompetent, and he sets the kitchen on fire. But it was a good character moment for Nick Cage's character because you see him kind of just like slowly walk over while Kip is freaking out about it and pour some like baking soda on the fire and put it out.
Mm-hmm. He tries the food, pretends it's nice.
Yeah, that's my next note. Actually, is Nick is so wholesome in this movie. It was yes, he's a thief and a criminal, but the way he treats the people around him is very wholesome. The way he treats his mother, the way he takes care of his brother.
Well, and you learn like he left all of this behind at his mother's request to protect his brother.
Right.
And what does he end up doing with his life when he goes straight? He ends up running little go-kart tracks for kids.
And like, having a repair shop. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's, underneath it all, like, yeah, is his passion something that's against the law? Yeah. But he's not like mean to people. He's not rude. He's not brutal. He's just like, he steals cars usually when people aren't around, right? He's not trying to have confrontations. He just likes to steal and drive cars. That's his thing. It's an interesting take because in so many of his movies we talk about how like he's a bad person but everyone around him is so much worse. It makes him look like the good guy, when in this case, like, he's not a bad human being. He's trying to be a good person. He's trying to be a better person, and bad people keep kind of bringing him back.
Right. That's true. So yeah, I like that in this one because in all those other movies, it's kind of some level of jerk.
Right.
But in this one, there really aren't much in the way of jerky moments for him, at least not like towards the people he cares about. Maybe towards the cops, there's some jerkiness, but even then he treats them with respect most of the time.
Yeah, he's even polite to them. Like, now maybe there's a little air of cockiness there because, he's never really been caught and he knows that, and they've got this cat and mouse that he really enjoys, but he's not like openly disrespectful to them. He's not egging them on. He's not trying to bait them or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true. My next note is that the actor that plays the cop, Delroy Lindo.
Yeah.
He's really good, man.
Yes.
I wish I saw him in more stuff. I knew him from this same year, I think, or right around the same time. There was a Jet Li movie that came out called Romeo Must Die.
Oh, sure.
And I don't know if I brought this up on the podcast before, but I'm a big martial arts, like, that kind of movie fan. And so Romeo Must Die was another one that I watched a lot growing up and I really liked. I had Aaliyah in it, and it was like a Romeo and Juliet story with Jet Li and Aaliyah.
Jet Li was in the one too, right?
He was, yeah.
Yeah, he's in that too.
Yeah, that was another one. Yeah.
He's been in a bunch of stuff. I mean, I'm sure you've seen him in lots of other things.
Probably. He just, like, I feel like I don't see him in big stuff very often. He really is a good, like, those movies that I mentioned and the one that you mentioned are really, he's really good. He's really believable. Like, he's a good actor, and I feel like he should be doing some heavier roles, but unfortunately I haven't really seen him much
Yeah, I
in
mean,
those roles for whatever
lately,
reason.
not so much. I mean, he was in the remake of Point Break. Um, yeah, so people might have seen him in that. He's done some voice work. I mean, his big stuff's older. Like he was in The Core, and he did Gone in 60 Seconds, of course. He was in Broken Arrow, and he was in Malcolm X and Congo and Get Shorty. So the 90s were kind of like his heyday, so to
Right.
speak, when he was younger. So
So at this point in the movie, he's calling all his, or he goes to visit Robert Duvall's character, who
mhm.
was like kind of a mentor to him. I got the vibe when they were like working together to steal cars. They had like a crew, and so he starts calling all these people from the old crew, trying to get him to come back. And one of the guys is a driving instructor
God,
at
that's
the
so
at
freaking
the
funny.
Pleasure Cruise Driving School, which I thought that was my next note. I thought that was a funny name for a driving school.
Well, so backing up to autos real quick though, this is another example of showing how like Memphis is trying to be a good person. He's trying to because he shows up to Otto's, and Otto used to run a chop shop. He doesn't anymore. It's all
Has
restorations
gone
now.
straight.
Yeah, exactly. And as soon as Memphis realizes that, he's like, it was a mistake for me to come here. I don't want to mess up what you have now. Like he didn't know that things had changed. And once he learned, he was like, no, I'm not going to drag you into this kind of thing. Like he's really trying to do the right thing
Yeah,
throughout the
he's really
movie.
stuck between like he doesn't want to ruin these people's lives, but also he doesn't want his brother to die.
Right. Or, his mom was threatened too,
Yeah,
and like, yeah, it's a really bad situation. And he's just trying to do the right thing.
for sure. And Otto has a cute dog, like a big old drooly guy chewing on license plates.
How many of your dogs eat metal?
I don't give them metal to eat. So, and well, the way you said all your dogs, for the record, I have two dogs. Not like, oh, I don't have like a whole menagerie of
Well, you've had dogs
dogs.
over the years,
That's
though,
true. That's true. That's true.
So I
Yeah,
meant
but none
over
of
the
them have
course of
really chewed on. I don't give them license plates in general
or car keys.
or car keys. Yeah, but we haven't got to that part. No spoilers, Derek.
Sorry, my bad.
Um, and then we get our introduction to a few of his people. One of which is Vinnie Jones
Mhm.
as the Sphinx. And so as soon as he came on screen, the first thing that came to my mind was, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. And so that was my next note.
A very different role from
Yes.
from Gone in 60 Seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not that different, really, except that he talks more as the Juggernaut.
He does. He does.
But that's
Yes.
the only difference, really. They're basically the same person.
God.
And we get our introduction to Sway,
Mhm.
who is Angelina Jolie's character,
Mhm.
drinking from a gas can, which, okay, like I, I work on cars for a living, and I'll tell you that nobody in my shop drinks out of a gas can. Like, that's maybe like a little too movie of a thing. It was really trying to drive the point home that she's a gearhead. They really wanted you to look at her and go, whoa, gearhead. She
Maybe
rolls
she
out on
actually
a
drank
creeper.
gasoline. Did you ever think of
Could
that?
be. Could be. She's like under a car when we see her, and she's like working on a creeper, and she like slides out on the creeper to go to her second job where she's a bartender apparently. Um, yeah. My next note is "You're healed." I don't know. Oh, that was Nick Cage's line. Well, who does he say that
He
to?
says it this way.
Does he?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, he's like, "You're healed." Like,
they're talking about how each other look at this point, and she mentions that he looks like he's a Bible salesman or something like that.
oh yeah. It was
Yeah.
just, I remember even as a kid, I loved that line. It was just such a funny, like his delivery is so good.
It feels ad-libbed, and I know he doesn't do that a ton, but it feels ad-libbed.
It did feel ad-libbed.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Exhibit A for when we're talking about Cage score later, because
Ooh, okay.
we have to remember these things when we're rating caginess.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay, so
But Sway's gone straight too, right? She's a legitimate mechanic. She's a bartender.
Yes.
She's not stealing cars either. Like he kind of slowly learns that like his whole crew, they've all gone straight since he's left.
And she specializes in Italian cars, which seems like it's going to be an important thing later in the movie. And I guess there's like one point when it's kind of important.
She does mostly steal like Lamborghinis and Ferraris.
Right, but I mean, when you go into her shop, it's all like Italian cars.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's established at this point that it's that she's like an Italian car person, which isn't as important later in the movie as it leads you to believe. But yeah, okay. So then we get him coming, Nick Cage's character Memphis coming out of the bar, and he gets approached by some thugs.
I forget the dude's name. I'm trying to find it in here, but basically it's like another group of carjack guys.
That were supposed to be doing the 50 cars, but Kip got the job instead of them.
Right, and now Memphis is doing it, and supposedly that he's coming in on their territory again or whatever, and so they want to beat up Nick Cage.
They do. Yeah, and so Sphinx shows up right at this moment, puts a Molotov cocktail. Well, it doesn't put a Molotov cocktail. It basically lights a rag on fire, turns the car into a giant Molotov cocktail, puts the rag in the gas tank, lights it on fire, and blows it up of the guys that are attacking Memphis.
Blows up 3 cars.
Yeah, and he like beats the shit out of them, and one of them he just like grabs their nuts and squishes them.
Yeah,
which was an interesting. You don't really see that in action movies these days. But yeah, so
but come on, like talking about Let's a Little Too movie. I can get past her using a gasoline can for her water jug, but like the dude, like it just blows up 3 cars as if they had bombs in them.
Well, gasoline is flammable, Derek.
Not like that. The car would catch on fire. Yeah, sure.
It's a movie, Derek. So we get, I don't remember who he's talking to, but there's a moment when he's talking about like how driving cars made him feel when he was a kid, or when he was younger and he started doing it. And he talks about how like, rolling the windows down and just being one with the car made him feel better no matter what the situation was. And I just thought that I liked that. It was somewhat relevant to me. So I don't know, that resonated with me more as an adult than as a kid because I wasn't really driving cars. But
it's a nice little monologue. It shows a little bit more of depth to the character. It shows some like softness and sensitivity to it, right? Because like they're really trying to paint him as like, yes, he was doing illegal stuff, but he's not like just any criminal.
Right.
Yeah. He's a deeper, more sophisticated person than his criminal record would reflect.
Right. So then we start to see the list. They start putting together the list, figuring out all the cars, naming them women's names, things like that. And the Toyota Supra Turbo on the list caught my eye because that's one of my favorite cars. And not necessarily one that would have been in 2000 that desirable. They didn't really pick up popularity until a few years later. They were just expensive in 2000. Yeah. But yeah. So we see the list, and when we get my favorite scene in the whole movie, the Ferrari dealership, Nick Cage.
Oh, God.
Which is another example of, for our Cage factor later.
2 Rogers don't make a right.
That's the line I have in here. It's so ridiculous and terrible, but hilarious.
No, it's wonderful. It's so good because, like, he just turns on this corny charm that totally catches the salesman off guard, disarms him, and it's just, it's such a good scene. I love that scene. Yeah.
And he's talking about like getting how he saw 4 of these cars in the front of the club the other day. And so that they have, they're pompous assholes with too much money or something along those lines. And he starts talking about this very specific, like 1960s Ferrari that he could buy, and it wouldn't make him a pompous asshole or whatever. It would make him a man of exquisite taste, and champagne would fall from the skies. And, he does this thing with his hands. It's wonderful. But I'm pretty sure most car dealerships don't keep like a stock of their cars from the 60s and 70s just in case they get somebody in there to buy one. Because he's like, oh, I can get it from the warehouse in a few days. Oh,
I didn't take it like they kept those just like randomly. I took it more as like at some point somebody upgraded their Ferrari to a newer one,
and the dealership's like, I'm just going to keep this 1960s Ferrari for 40 years.
I mean, I guess it depends, right? Like if some of these older ones get, they're worth millions of dollars.
They are now.
Oh, I mean,
in 2000 they were not.
A 1967 Ferrari was not worth $1 million in 2000.
No, absolutely not. The most expensive car to ever sell at auction at that point was like not 60,000. It was like, it was less than $1 million. I'm pretty sure cars didn't start going for crazy, insane amounts of money at auction, like millions of dollars for a long time after that.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. But like,
But I just don't think
this
that
movie, this movie's kind of weird with the cars, though, right? Like we were talking off mic about the list. The list has some weird stuff on it,
yeah.
right? Like,
It's like
yeah,
they struggled to fill out the 50 cars.
right. Like, yeah, you've got the Supra, you've got the '67 Ferrari, but you also have like a '99 Lincoln Navigator.
Right.
That's on the list.
Which, you know, as a car guy, I would just assume that this is like a very custom Lincoln Navigator with like, you know, custom everything. But none of the cars
No, it
shown
can't
are
be.
super heavily modified or anything.
But here's the thing: there's no way for that logic to follow for the characters because they just have a list of
That's true. They just find them.
make and trim. That's it, and they just
That's
have to
fair.
find examples of it, right? Like one of them, like where was it? There was one that was just like, yeah, a '99 Escalade. That's it. It just says Cadillac Escalade,
Yeah.
right? There's not there. We don't know that there's anything, you know, outside of the norm about that. But then of course there's a couple of Aston Martins on the list too. Like it's
Sure.
a very weird list of cars.
It is. It is. The other part of this scene, well, I love everything in this scene, but something that came to mind now that I know more about cars than I did back then is that this dealership, what they show in this movie is not how Ferrari dealerships work.
Okay.
Kind of notoriously in the car world, if you're Elon Musk and have billions and billions of dollars, you can't go to a Ferrari dealership and just buy whatever Ferrari you want. That's not how it works. You can buy this one Ferrari, which is like the base level, entry level Ferrari. And until you've owned that Ferrari for a couple of years, maybe bought a couple other Ferraris after that, it's like a membership program essentially where like if they come out with the Enzo Ferrari and it costs $1.5 million, not just anybody can go buy that. They're gonna offer that to the people that are like Ferrari's most loyal customers. And even if you decide to sell that car, then they can't stop you from selling it, but they're going to try and get that car back. Like there's notoriously been people that have put like a vinyl wrap on their car, which is very popular these days. You can change the color of the car, things like that. Well, Ferrari sees it and sends them like a cease and desist letter to not do that with their cars. And they don't have really legal grounds for stopping that.
Right.
But it doesn't stop them from trying because they have a very specific image that they try and cultivate with their cars.
But
and that's part of it.
That does kind of support the warehouse concept, though, that they always try and get their cars back and they can't just keep them all.
Sure, but it doesn't support the
floor.
fact that this guy could come and pretend to be a millionaire and get one from the warehouse without any trouble.
Yeah. I mean, what I mean? That's fair.
And that's really nitpicky. That's like really in the weeds, but I just
maybe
because
it's used. Maybe because it's a used one?
It doesn't matter.
No? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. But yeah, like I said, that's in the weeds. But yeah, for me, it was funny. You can't do that nowadays. I don't think you could do that then either. But that's kind of Ferrari's kind of notoriously been that way for a long time. So then we meet Eleanor for the first time, and I think now is a good time to just go ahead and bring up something because Eleanor is a '67 Shelby Mustang GT500. I think I have the year right. I'm not really a big Mustang guy, so
you're right.
You know,
it's one of my favorite cars personally.
It's a beautiful car. I am not a Mustang guy, but seeing that car in this movie was just, I mean, it is a gorgeous piece of machinery.
I'm a 60s Mustang guy. That's
well, it's funny because I think in the original movie it was a 73, not a 67.
Oh, that's interesting.
But
I definitely prefer the 67.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So after this movie came out, like whenever you get a car that's very iconic in a movie, you get people wanting to build that car, do tributes to that car. You see people building Ghostbusters cars and DeLoreans and A-Team vans and all these other things. And this car is no exception. I mean, especially because this one is not like, it's not a typical movie car. If you just saw it on the street, you didn't know the movie, you just think that's a really pretty car.
Right. That's a cool muscle car.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know all the specifics of this, but I know that the company that owns, or the person that owns the Gone in 60 Seconds license is very notorious for lawsuits and things like that around the usage of the Eleanor moniker. So there was a famous in the car world, I should say, channel called B for Builds, I think is what it's called, where they were building basically an Eleanor. They took a 2015 Mustang and they basically tried to put the body of a 1967 Mustang that looked like Eleanor on it.
Interesting.
And he called it Eleanor in some YouTube videos. And he actually got the car confiscated after lawsuits, I believe. He declared in a video that it is now property of Gone in 60 Seconds. There's been a couple of shops that have been licensed to build Eleanor replicas, so there's some of those floating around. But if you are monetizing that name at all, like this person had a monetized YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were making money calling the car Eleanor, and that's where the problem was. So if you're just like a guy in your garage building a Mustang that looks like this, calling it Eleanor, and you're not profiting off of it, you're probably okay. But if you're profiting off of it in any way, they are very litigation happy. Actually, I think it went into open domain or whatever that's called when you can use it. Public domain, like in the last year.
That's interesting. That's kind of a short turnaround, but that is interesting.
I read something about that. I don't know everything about this, but I did think in the car world, it's kind of a well-known thing that you don't call your project car Eleanor.
Man, that just comes off so bitter. Like I can't imagine that happening in any other context. Like
yeah.
I mean, I guess I didn't watch any of those videos or anything like that. Maybe the guy was really just trying to steal somebody's IP. Like that is the thing. I guess I can't say, but yeah, that's messed up. That is messed up.
Yeah. So
I'm a little surprised that functionally works, that you can put a 67 body on a 2015, but
yes. So it was actually in December of 2022. So very recently.
Oh, wow.
That there was a judgment that reversed an earlier decision saying that a vehicle cannot be copyrighted as an IP.
Oh, so it's been reversed.
Yes. So now you can build an Eleanor Mustang, but you couldn't before. So yeah, in the last month, well, we're recording this in January 23. I'm not sure when this comes out, but yeah, it's been reversed in the last month. So that's interesting. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent to the movie, but I just thought it was an interesting fact that came about from this movie.
No, it is interesting, right? Because like this is one of the few movies of his that we've watched that has kind of a larger following, and there's a lot of like tactile real world things in it. Like these are all real cars. Yeah, some of them are certainly outside the realm of the two of us, in our lifetimes, right? But like, if you wanted a Mustang,
yeah,
that's a realistic car to get,
Yeah. Well, it was at one point, not anymore, really.
Well, I don't know. I think you could still probably
not a 67.
I mean, maybe not a 67 exactly. No,
we're kind of getting into the weeds here on this, so then there's like a chase scene. I don't remember the context exactly, but somebody jumps a fence and lands in front of a doghouse that has Beast written on it. And it's like a tiny dachshund that comes out. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, that's the second time this other group jumps him. And
the like the gangsters or what thugs or whatever they were called.
The other carjackers.
The other thieves.
They do this whole foot chase through this neighborhood.
And then they end up in a diner. That's right.
Right, which is just a great scene. They're sitting in the window like,
my next note is just diner scene because I love that scene. He's like bullshitting with this trucker guy to like try and distract him so that his brother can go wrap this like tow chain around the axle of this guy's car and rip it out when he takes off. So it's because all these guys follow him. They're just sitting in this car with guns loaded and waiting for him to leave, but there's some police in the diner, so they don't just go in. But when this truck takes off and pulls like the car apart, the police obviously notice that and run out there and ask them if they have licenses for these firearms.
Those boys, they all get busted.
Yes, they get busted, and we don't see them again for the rest of the movie.
No, never. We don't see them again. It is a funny moment though when he's talking to the truck driver and everything, and he's like, "So how do you get a job like that? What do you have to do?"
Yeah,
you need a license. Oh, right.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. So then we get the scene with this guy. It was introduced like earlier in the movie is one of Kip's sidekick guys, whatever, one of his crew. And he's introduced as the guy that can order really good pizza or something like that. So he's kind of desperate to prove himself through this whole movie. Anyway, so he goes out and steals a car. And apparently this car was just sitting in like a bad neighborhood with the keys in it. And he doesn't find that suspicious at all. So he drives this car to Otto's shop and they find out that it's full of drugs.
Heroin,
yeah. And so right at this time, conveniently, the detective shows up to Otto's shop and starts like questioning him. But it's an 83 Cadillac Eldorado that they stole. And this guy's like, who restores an 83 Cadillac Eldorado? Are you kidding? Like, he does not buy this for a minute.
Well, it's got, sentimental value.
Right. That's what Otto says. But like I love this detective because he's not, nobody's fooling him. Like, he knows nobody really, like in 2000. Yeah. And there's a difference between now because it's been another 20 years. So that's a 40-year-old car now.
But I do love that the detective, like, he knows his cars. Right? Like, yeah, he's in charge of like the Grand Theft Auto stuff and everything. And maybe that's just the way those guys are. I don't know. But this dude knows his stuff.
Right. And so, it so for context, this movie came out in 2000 and that car was an 83. So it was a 17-year-old car. Mm-hmm. Whereas, so like now that would be the equivalent of like early 2000s Chevy Cavalier. So maybe like, or like a Dodge Neon or something. Right. Like, in 2000, that was not a desirable car because it wasn't a classic. But now it's considered a classic. So it's more, nowadays we'll watch that movie and go, people would restore that all day. Are you kidding me? But, nowadays that would be like restoring like an old Dodge Neon, like nobody, it's not desirable. Nobody really cares. Now in 2043, maybe that Dodge Neon will be worth some money. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah. But I'm not speculating on the used car market for the next 20 years. But I'm just saying for context. That's what it may seem weird that the guy's so skeptical of that car. But yeah. So then we see that, there's probably some other stuff that happens. But the next note is about the Elvis fingerprints. So the guy wants to wear gloves going out to boost cars. And this tech guy is like, I got your stuff right here. And he's like, put these on your fingers. And it's like silicone fingers. And he says, now you have Elvis's fingerprints. I'm like, how did they get Elvis's fingerprints? You know what I mean? Like, is there just a database of famous people's fingerprints that's easily accessible for people?
Here's the thing. The whole bit makes no sense. Because they're stealing cars. They don't need, it's not like they're doing fingerprint readers or something like that. Why do they have fake fingerprints at all?
Because they're not going to be dusting the cars for fingerprints because guess what? The cars are stolen.
Well, but like, even if they were totally clean cars that had never been touched by another human being somehow, they steal them off the factory assembly line. Okay. Why not just put blanks on the fingertips?
Exactly. Why does it need fingerprints?
Why does it need to be not just fingerprints, but Elvis's fingerprints?
Because apparently they really want to confuse the police officers. But I'm pretty sure like if you ran the prints and put them in a database, it wouldn't pop up and say Elvis. Like I'm really, even in 2000, I'm pretty sure they just didn't have Elvis's fingerprints like, ready to roll. Anyway,
it doesn't make any sense because like the dude's gonna wear gloves. Like, just wear gloves. Like, it's funny. Silly. Yeah.
So then we get like the start of the actual heist, and apparently the tradition before the heist for the Nick Cage's crew, Kip or Memphis Reigns, is to listen to Lowrider for like 18 seconds, and then go. And he has to have his leather jacket on.
Yes, he has to. Yes.
So those are the two requirements to starting a job with Memphis Reigns' crew. Yeah. Okay. So this next scene is going to get into the car weeds a little bit. So I'm sorry about that in advance if you don't care about cars. But the first like place they go to make their big heist is a like warehouse full of Italian cars, Ferraris, and things like that.
Yeah, I figured it was that dealership's warehouse.
It could be. Yeah. And so Sway being the Italian person, they basically make it a big deal. They have her come over to this car. She's like, the guy's like, okay, work your magic, Sway. And it literally just shows her connecting the battery cables and jump starting the car. Which if you know literally anything about cars, jump starting a car is not magic. It's in fact the opposite of magic. It's one of the easiest things to do on a car, and that's all she does. It's not like she like adjusts the carburetors and you know jimmies the starter to get it to go. Like she just jump starts them with like a portable jump starter,
Mm-hmm.
all of them. But they need her to do that because she's the specialist.
Maybe they require a special
They don't.
voltage. I don't
Derek.
know,
They
man.
don't.
I
Trust
don't
me.
know.
No,
They made a
no
big
car
deal
cars
out
have.
of it. I don't
Every
know.
car runs on basically the same voltage, so that doesn't mean
I
anything.
know.
But
I know.
yeah, it was just funny to me as a car guy. Probably not as funny to anybody else, but whatever. And then we see the doctor from Scrubs.
Yeah, we do. Big Bobby Kelso.
Yeah, Dr. Kelso from Scrubs. He gets his car stolen. That was funny. They do actually legitimately do like a car thing at one point. I don't remember which car it was, but it shows them jumping a starter solenoid, which is something you could do on older cars where you could take like a screwdriver and cross the two terminals on the starter solenoid and it would basically crank the car. I had to do that. I had an 83 Datsun that had some issues that I was restoring and I had to do that. My dad showed me that trick.
That's
So
pretty funny.
thanks, Dad.
I do want to say just real quick, though, going back to Bob Kelso's car.
Oh my God. How did I know you were going to go back to Kelso?
It has nothing to do with the actor. It has to do with how they steal the car. So a valet, one of them poses as a valet to steal the car as it's being dropped off. How did they know that was going to happen? They have to steal specific models, right? They have a specific list of cars. How did they know that
because they have a list. They have a list of owners, and they've been casing them for 18 hours. So obviously, they know exactly where he's going to be.
Right? Yeah, totally. I just found that really unbelievable.
Yeah, and then we find out that so at one point earlier in the movie, they talk about these Mercedes with laser cut keys, which nowadays is kind of silly, but they have to like Mercedes has to order these keys from
Germany,
their headquarters in Germany directly.
Which somehow like not only overnights them but gets them in like 6 hours.
Yeah, it's very impressive. But they found one of Kip's crew found a guy that was dirty that worked at the Mercedes dealership and just happened to be the guy in charge of the keys and had been paying him for these keys. And the cops also find this out. And so they tell the guy, well, call us if this guy comes back. And so the guy comes back, buys the keys, and then the cops now know they're going after this car. And so they start staking out this car. And they see Memphis come up and take a picture of it at one point. And then the night comes to Memphis actually trying to steal it. And he notices that the van has moved 2 driveways closer to the car, which is a very baller move on his part. I mean,
oh, yeah.
That just shows you how good he is.
It's such a great, he's walking up to the car. He's got the key out. He's going to put it in. He's going to get busted. And he walks away.
And then you hear the ladies are dirty. The ladies are dirty. And they're talking about how all these cars are dirty. All the Mercedes are dirty. Mm-hmm. So then they have to later on steal the cars from the dealership, which we'll get into, or not the dealership, the police impound, which we'll get into. But then we see they talk about how they're going to do it. And they're like, oh, well, I guess we still have the old keys from the ones that are in the police impound. And they just leave the keys sitting on the table while they're deciding. And the dog that was showing on the license plate just eats the keys. 3 sets of laser cut Mercedes keys.
Which apparently has never happened before for a dog that lives in an auto shop.
Right. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So the next scene we see Nick Cage's character and Angelina Jolie sitting in a car waiting for their chance to steal this Lambo, which was a really nice looking Lamborghini, by the way.
Yeah.
And they basically are watching this couple like prepare to be intimate, I'll say. And they start having their own like conversation about what's more exciting, stealing cars or having sex.
Because they used to date. We
right.
find out
they were a couple at some point. Yeah. And so she like straddles the shifter and starts like making out with him. And he starts like just saying random car parts.
Just totally. Okay.
Like at first it made sense because he's talking about, well, she says you wouldn't want to damage the shifter. He's like, yeah, you don't want to mess with the shifter linkages or the clutch master cylinder. But eventually like he just starts naming random car parts that have no association with anything he's doing. And it just makes her more and more aroused until the the people that they're watching have sex actually start having sex, and then they go steal the car and leave him horny and wanting, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Which, by the way, the movie is rated. It says nudity, and really you just get a little bit of booty from the random couple.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
So then the next scene is the two of the people from Kip's gang trying to make this dog poop, or like walk this dog and get it to poop. And this other gang, apparently, that they're on their turf.
Another gang.
Another gang shows up, and they're like, get off our turf or whatever. And then the dog starts shitting. And one of the guy that was desperate to prove himself, like goes over and starts digging through the dog shit with like no gloves on or anything. And this gang member is like, oh, what's wrong with you, man? And then I'll just leave him alone after that. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And so then we get the scene where they're stealing the Mercedes from the impound. And they have this guy come in as a distraction for the like guard of the impound while they're like cutting through the fence and everything to get the cars out. And at one point the guard turns around and like almost starts looking at the cameras, and he distracts him by pulling a Barbie out of his pocket and making her think she's a brick house.
Yeah.
Which leads to some questions. First of all, why was he carrying around a Barbie? Was it just for this situation?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's like, of all the things I could bring to distract this guard, it's going to be a Barbie. Did he just go to the store and buy a Barbie for this? Because he's never shown to have any daughters. There's never any young girls. Like you said, there's like 2 women in the whole movie.
I mean, maybe he's got a family. I don't know.
But they never established that. So he's just a creepy guy with a Barbie is all. Anyway, it was a pretty funny scene.
It was.
It was around this time that I realized how much different of a movie this would be if it was modern day.
Yes.
Because of the technology we have with cell phones and just like police technology, the internet. The internet was around at this point, but it was a much different internet than what we have now.
No, there are no smartphones.
Right. This movie would be...
Nobody had GPS built into these cars or anything like that.
I'd actually kind of like to see a remake of this movie done also with Nicolas Cage. Same cast and everything.
Just like a sequel?
No, I want a remake with the same cast, but like with modern technology to see how they would handle this kind of a job with like cell phones and internet.
See, I say you do it as a sequel where Eccleston's brother is a metal worker, and he is mad that
he always hated wood.
Yeah.
I mean, I would watch that too. We can cancel the Face Off sequel. Let's just focus on this.
Played by Eccleston. It's got to be played by the same guy.
Yeah.
But he's got, black hair. And
throughout this, we're seeing like a lot of cars being stolen. And I'm not talking about every single one of them. No, but then we get to this one. They get to this one where I don't remember I think this was the Escalade. Where it is like this one's like really decked out. It's got like bigger wheels lifted.
I thought it was a Suburban, but I don't
maybe
see
it was.
Suburban on
it
the
was
list.
A GM product, I'm pretty sure. But
was it the Yukon then?
Could have been. But the car says Snake on the license plate.
Oh, right, that one. Sorry, I was thinking about a different car.
Yeah, and so they're like trying to steal this car, and the cops show up, and the guy that was singing "She's a Brick House" with the doll before.
So that's the Humvee, by the yeah, that you're.
Oh, Humvee.
I was thinking
still a GM
later.
product, but yeah, it was a Hummer, and it was a big beast. But there's an actual snake in the car, and they don't realize
legit,
it. Like a
I don't know, like a
boa constrictor of some kind.
Yeah.
Reticulated python, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a snake guy, but it was in the car. They start freaking out, and this cop, it's like one of those. They don't really have them much anymore, but it's like a ramp that goes up. Like in the Dark Knight, they had one. I think
it's the same parking garage,
probably single ramp that goes all the way up, and it's like really only wide enough for like 1.5 cars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's inconvenient for everybody involved. But the Hummer is going down this ramp while the cop car is going up. And so the Hummer just pushes, and I love this because, I mean, that's what would happen. But the Hummer just like pushes this cop car all the way down. And then when they get out of the parking garage, you just see the snake like fly onto the cop car with like a really satisfying thud. And I love snakes. I love animals, but that was funny.
That was
I
funny.
also, as much as I love animals, I like seeing fake animals in movie get thrown around. I don't know why.
Well, because like
But
the whole scene's hilarious though, because the guy in the passenger seat's like, the snake's going up my ass.
yeah. Oh God. Yeah. That was so funny.
It's-
Oh, I only wish that Nick Cage had been driving instead, so that we could have gotten some like cagey stuff going on with that.
well, that's the thing. Like, it's Sphinx who's driving because he's partnered up with this guy, and Sphinx doesn't speak until the end of the movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
So he's just this stone silent stoic type throughout the whole film. That I guess that's the idea, is these two are supposed to be, opposites of each other. But
Yeah. So then the next car we see, which I'm going to touch on because it has plot relevance, kind of, is the one you were probably talking about. I think is a Yukon, where they go steal it out of somebody's garage.
yeah.
But it's Kip's crew, and they have like a stowaway with them of the guy that's supposed to do computer stuff, the nerd that wants to go and steal cars, but they won't let him. And so he stows away with them and goes to help steal the car. And of course, running away from the cops, he gets shot because he's going to. That is so obvious that that's going to happen. And then that really doesn't have any plot relevance after that. Like, he gets shot, he gets back, and they take him to the hospital.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of like forgotten about.
It is really weird. It kind of feels like padding for the movie. And the
Yeah.
movie's almost 2 hours. It's an hour and 57 minutes. The director's cuts over 2 hours. And like, this scene just feels like padding because nothing happens.
Yeah, that's true.
They do this whole scene at the doctor's office, but he's going to be fine.
Right.
I guess you do have, okay. You do have the point where Atlee explains to Kip what's going on with his brother, because Kip like hates his brother Memphis for leaving. Right. And Atlee,
yeah, but you could have done that scene without the guy getting shot.
100%. But that's what it's
not really
used
plot
for.
relevance.
That's all.
Yeah. So then that's like car number 49, I think. And then then basically all that's left after that is Eleanor.
Yeah.
And so we get to see Memphis Reigns like lovingly seduce Eleanor and break into Eleanor. And yeah, my next note is that's a beautiful car. It really is. It's a gorgeous car.
It's in like, I love silver cars. That's just a thing for me. It's like, it just looks exactly like, if I was going to buy that car, that's the exact one that I would buy. It's just,
it's gorgeous. Yeah. And there's a pretty great chase scene that happens with this car. That's a good portion of basically the climax of this movie.
It's a long chase.
But the cops are driving a BMW, which I thought was interesting.
The detective is.
Yeah. Because you don't really see a lot of BMW cop cars.
Well, it's not it's not a cop car because he's got one of those lights you have to put on the dashboard. So
but it is a cop car because it's not his personal vehicle, because he's driving it around all the time on the job.
I don't know. I felt like it was supposed to be his car.
Yeah, maybe. I just thought it was interesting because BMW does make police cars. They're not in America, though. They're not. They don't use them in America. And so during this chase, there's some things that happen that, are pretty extravagant in terms of damage, like cops slamming into things. At one point, a cop gets hit by like a wrecking ball and knocked through a wall. And these cops should definitely be dead from what happens. But it makes a point to show them like walking out every time something like this happens.
Well, and like that guy in particular, like the movie's a little self-aware at this point. The other cop, Timothy goes up to him, is like, "Are you all right? You just went through a wall."
Yeah.
He actually says the line out loud,
I mean, that's not the only one. There's a couple where there's like rollovers and like slamming into things really hard. And
one cop car gets hit by a bus.
Yeah. I mean, they would definitely be dead in real life. I feel like there's no getting away from, but if he was dead, then that would make Memphis a murderer, and they didn't want to do that. So,
right.
So something I thought was interesting as an adult watching this movie that I didn't really notice as a kid, is that you never really see Eleanor doing anything dangerous. Anytime there's something dangerous that happens, it's always from the perspective of like a front bumper shot where you don't know what car it's on really, or like a shot of Nicolas Cage driving. Mm-hmm. There's a couple spots where you could say, well, they did this, and that there was a couple tiny spots, but for the most part, whenever you see like a wide shot of Eleanor like in this chase, it's always a good distance away from cop cars. Mm-hmm. and basically anything else that could be hit. And they did have several Eleanors for this movie, but you could tell that it cost so much to build every one of them that they did not want to wreck these cars.
Well, and I think also part of it is that most of them were not the right car.
Right. Yeah.
Right. They were Mustangs, right? But
they were more modern.
They were different Mustangs that had to be built on top of and stuff. And I think that helped them kind of hide that a bit and, kind of not the CGI age that we have today. Right. They needed to hide some of that. And I think they do a pretty good job of it. Because I mean, you wouldn't want to wreck a real one.
Right. And it is watching it back that I remember this chase being just like super amazing as a kid, but then watching it back, I'm like, okay, I mean, it is really good. Don't get me wrong. They don't really do chases like that anymore, but you know, the car that you want to see like do dangerous shit is never actually the car that you see doing dangerous shit.
It's a fun sequence, because they add like I said earlier, right? They get into a lot of shenanigans in this movie, right? You've got the snake, right? You've got the heroin car, right? There's lots of like little shenanigans. And this is another one where like, he's driving backwards going down this main, throughway and a kid sees him, as he passes and he waves at the kid,
Right. Yeah, it is. It's a very fun sequence. But yeah, several cops should be dead, but it makes a point to show them not dead and whatever. It's fine. And then, so the chase concludes on a bridge.
Are we not going to talk about the jump?
That's what happens. It happens on the bridge.
Does it?
Yes. Why do you think there's like only 2 lanes of traffic? It's on the bridge.
I thought it was just construction.
So there's like a backup of traffic because of a wreck or something. There's like emergency crews. And there's a tow, like a flatbed tow truck that's getting ready to tow a car that's been in a wreck. And Nick Cage's, he gets stuck behind, Memphis Reigns gets stuck behind all of this construction. And the cops are on his tail. And there's one lane completely empty because of this wreck. And the guy, I guess, because the thing's it doesn't make any sense. I've never seen it work out that way in real life. But
nobody's
in the movie,
cutting anybody off. Everybody's being really polite.
Everybody's polite. So he has this very clear shot to this flatbed that is now at an angle like a ramp. And so he just guns it. And
all the cops are behind him.
Yes.
Right. And,
with their guns pointed at him.
The detective's there is like, Reigns.
Yeah. And so then he just takes off and you get this glorious CG Mustang, 2000 CG Mustang flying through the air, extra shiny. There's like, they put extra lens flares off the Mustang because it was so shiny. And I mean, it looks real bad, but fun. It is fun. But yeah, it flies through the air. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't actual Eleanor that landed there that busted out the suspension. They did actually jump a car and smash the suspension on a car because you see it flying through the air and then you just kind of see a smash cut to it like slamming into the ground. And it's a real car that slams into the ground. So, I mean, they definitely damaged the hell out of that car. But there's no traffic on the other side, of course, because the wreck is blocking all the traffic. So no cars coming. So he gets away and he shows up 14 minutes late or something. 12 minutes late. And so he goes to talk to Raymond Calitri and convince him that, it's fine. Everything's fine. You got your cars, even though Eleanor was destroyed at this point, like the mirror's falling off and like it's just completely trashed. And while he's talking to Raymond, you see like the pickup thing for cars in the background just pick up Eleanor and crush the top and like drop it into a big pile of cars.
And look, I know it's not the real car, but it's still sad.
It's meant to be sad because he has that relationship. It's a character in the movie, essentially. But then we get this wonderful line from Raymond Calitri. Do you know the line I'm getting ready to say?
No.
It never rains, but it pours. Memphis, in reference to Memphis Rains and Kip Rains.
Yeah.
Which was, it's such a forced line. I thought
line.
You would get it. I thought you would 100% know that I was going there.
I think I blocked it out. It's a bad line.
Yeah, it's real bad. And then we get like another cagey moment where he's talking about how he's a little wired and a little tired. He kind of goes off there's like a split second where they let him just kind of do his thing. Walking through the steel mill again, there's basically it ends up there's a shootout. Like Memphis is being chased by Raymond Calitri, and the cop shows up. The police officer, detective, whatever, shows up.
Well, hang on. You're going too fast because you're missing the
Well, it's
whole.
already been a long podcast, so I'm
Are
trying
we
to
going
like,
long? Are we going long? Okay.
I'm trying
Well,
to, keep it somewhat.
all right, that's fair. But like, I'm a little tired. I'm a little wired. It's very cagey, right? And then we get to the guy's Calitri's office where he's got, his chairs and stuff made of wood. And, Calitri's got a gun, but, Memphis picks up one of the chairs and Calitri's like, whoa, man. Oh, he's got a knife at that point. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Put the chair down. Put the chair down. Like, and he
it's like a hostage situation with the chair.
And Memphis breaks the chair a little bit, like it's all these shenanigans, right? We can't just have like a fight scene. It's got to have some shenanigans in it, and then the shootout.
Yeah. So then they're chased through the steel mill, and just throughout this thing, there's like random sparks shooting out and like more fireballs.
Very Terminator 2.
Very Terminator 2, but very like, where the hell is OSHA? Maybe OSHA wasn't around in 2000, but there's a lot of workplace hazards there. I would have a problem working there for sure. Yeah. And then
the detective's there.
Yeah.
Right. And he's hunting down too. And he doesn't know who's shooting who, but he knows Memphis. Memphis is
involved. And then Raymond Calitri runs into the detective, and pulls, has the gun pointed at him. And out of nowhere, Nick Cage comes and does like this WWE wrestling style double drop kick to Raymond Calitri over the rail, and he falls
his diehard fall
into the coffin that he made.
Mm-hmm. Which is highlighted earlier in the film. Right, foreshadowing.
Yeah, they made a point to show that earlier. And so they arrest the detective's like, well, I'm kind of at an impasse here. Like, do I arrest
ethical quandary?
Yeah, ethical quandary. And long story short, he does not arrest Memphis. He arrests the other guy, and everybody's happy. And then there's a picnic.
By the way, another parallel to Stolen is that, the cop could arrest him, probably should arrest him, right? And instead he's like, nah, I'm going to let you go.
That's also parallel with Joe.
I thought he died in Joe.
He did, but also remember the cop is he's like assaulting a cop, and then the cop just like lets him walk away.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of police officers in his movies. But then we get this little picnic outside Otto's place.
Yeah, the inspiration for the entire Fast and the Furious franchise.
Pretty much, yeah, family. And we see like Sway like hand feeding the guy that got shot, like licking his fingers for some reason.
That goes too far.
It was a little weird.
It went from like kind of cute and sweet to like, okay, what are you doing?
Listen, I have a lot of friends in my life and people I would consider family that aren't blood, but if one of them started like licking my fingers randomly, depending on who it was, I'd probably have a pretty big problem with it.
Well, I mean, this was supposed to be like this younger kid, and she's like, this hot, sexy car thief is like the picture that's supposed to be painted here.
Right, but they're all like family.
I mean, are they? They just met.
I mean, I don't know. After this,
he's from
bonded.
The new crew,
Whatever. Anyway.
It's still weird. No, it's
very weird.
It's very weird.
And I would have a weird feeling if any of my friends did that. I was just being funny when I said most of my friends.
Well, I'm not going to do it.
Okay. Well, never say never. Anyway, we get the scene where, any character that's silent through the whole movie.
Yeah.
You instantly know that by the end of the movie, they're going to say something like really smart and like, they're going to be very well spoken. And there's no exception with Sphinx. He has this little moment talking about how the sacrifice and how like any of us should be so lucky to be shot while doing this or something. I don't know.
Do you want the quote?
I don't. They
I got it.
I'm aware. I could get the quote too. We don't quote anything else to this movie. We don't need to be quoting that. We pull into the shop. Everybody's like, "Oh, Memphis, you got to come into the shop. You got to come into the shop." And he goes in there, and they rescued Eleanor, apparently, even though the whole top of it was smashed in. They like already.
Oh, it's a different car.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I always thought it was meant to be like they pulled that car from the junkyard because he calls it Eleanor.
I mean, so it's supposed to be a 67 GT 500. It's supposed to be the same kind of car. Right, but
it came from a junkyard because it's all rusty and
but it's not crushed or anything. It's just rusted out.
Well, he runs a repair shop. He probably welded a new top to it. I don't know.
I don't know. But he says that he bought it outright because Kip, he says he sold the chopper to pay for it. Like He wouldn't have had to do
Yeah,
that if he took it out of the junkyard. How much
that
could that have
Datsun,
possibly cost?
that Datsun I bought that I talked about earlier, I bought from a junkyard.
How
So
much was it?
800.
Okay. Like, I mean, he's selling a whole motorcycle? I don't know. It just seems,
Well, he's broke.
I don't think it's that
Anyway,
Mustang. I think
it
it's a
doesn't
different
matter.
Mustang.
But yeah, he drives it off. But it's okay. Here's another argument for it's the same Mustang, because when he goes to drive it away and it cuts to the black for the credits, it starts to die on him like the other Eleanor
Right.
did.
But then,
And you're telling me that every 67 Mustang is like, no, I'm not going to run for this guy.
well, no, hang on a second though, because it's implied throughout the whole movie that every time he tries to steal one of these, it's a bad time. Everything goes wrong. Are we supposed to assume it's been the same
Yes.
one each time?
Yes.
So he's been trying to steal the exact same Mustang
Yes.
in LA for like 10 years.
That's my take on it. I don't think it's ever actually established in the movie, but that's my take on it. It doesn't matter. Let's not get into an argument about it. We're wasted enough time on it already.
Okay.
But yes, Derreck's opinion is that there's 167 GT500 Mustangs running around this one city.
Yep. All of them are in
He's
LA.
tried to steal all of them except for this
one.
that's
what I
one.
said. Yep.
Anyway, now we need to rate the movie, right?
Yes. So we have our Cage-o-meter. We've got two scales, quality and caginess, 0 to 20. 0 is low, 20 is high. Ryan, we're going to start with quality first. Where would you rate Gone in 60 Seconds?
I don't know, man. This is a tough one because it's not really a great movie.
No.
It's a movie I really like.
I will say, as far as movies from around the year 2000 go, I think it holds up better than most from like a writing and humor perspective. Yes, it definitely is lacking on like women in the movie. And there's a few lines that are not great, but not like a lot. I don't even remember what they are. That's, they're kind of few and far between.
I'm just saying this isn't going to be in like the top 100 movies of all time.
No.
It's good. It's not great. It's not like the best Nick Cage movie that we'll ever review. I'm probably going to put it at around probably a 12 or a 13. Maybe that's too high. I don't know. I think
I was going to give it a 12.
Okay. So I'm not too far off. Yeah. It's a really fun movie. It's significantly more entertaining than a lot of the other movies we've watched. It has its issues, but like just the sheer fun of it is enough to overcome those issues a lot for me. So
are you giving it a 12 or a 13?
I'll give it a 13 and you can give it a
13.
12. We'll put it at 12 and a half.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because like I think it's also lighter. It's not quite as heavy or serious, even though obviously there's high stakes. It's just a more enjoyable movie compared to a lot of what we've watched so far. Even though, like, some of the good stuff has been, heavy, right? Leaving Las Vegas, for example, like it's a great movie, but I don't want to sit down and watch that again.
Right. Yeah, absolutely not.
All right. So caginess. Now there's clearly moments, right? We've talked about them, right? There's several moments in the movie that are cagey, but it's not like way out there either. So, I mean, I'm thinking from a caginess standpoint, maybe like, I'm thinking.
Are you looking at other movies that we've given?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, good.
I've got our scores up and I'm thinking about things over time. So I have to kind of put it in there and I'm thinking like a 9.
Yeah, I was thinking like a 10. So I think that we're going to be right where we're supposed to be.
Okay. Because, that kind of puts it like right around It Could Happen to You, just below The Family Man.
Yeah, I think he was definitely cagier in The Family Man. So
right. Same with Moonstruck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
Okay. Cool. So then there you have it. So it's a 12.5 out of 20 for quality and a 9.5 out of 20 for caginess. Now, last bit of business, we have our Wheel O' Cage that has 18 Nicolas Cage movies on it, and it determines what movie we're going to watch next. So Gone in 60 Seconds is no longer on the wheel. So we have to determine what movie is going to join the wheel. And the movie that will be joining the wheel is Industrial Symphony No. 1, The Dream of the Brokenhearted, which is a TV movie. If I remember right, that is his very first.
Credit.
No, it's not. I apologize. The Best of Times is a TV movie. That was his first. This one's a little bit later. But yeah, so that is what is joining the Wheel O' Cage. So to find out what movie we'll be talking about next, go to comingofcage.com to watch our spin of the Wheel O Cage for episode 19. Ryan, anything else for Gone in 60 Seconds?
Nope. If you're a car guy, watch it if you haven't already. But it's a lot of fun. If you're not a car guy, well, you'll probably still like it. It's just gonna not have as many deep cuts for you.
Yeah. Beautiful cars, fun popcorn flick. There you have it. All right. Well, this has been the Coming of Cage podcast, comingofcage.com or at Coming of Cage. I'm Derek. That was Ryan. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening.